It was barely dawn, the kind of early morning where the world still feels half asleep, shadows clinging to the edges of houses like reluctant ghosts, and there I was, Ethan Black, stepping out onto my porch with a mug of hot coffee in hand, the steam curling up in lazy spirals against the chill air, expecting to see my trusty SUV parked right where I'd left it the night before after a long surveillance shift, but instead, staring at an empty spot that hit me like a punch to the gut, my vehicle. Gone, vanished into thin air, not from some random thief hunting for parts in the dead of night, but from something way more personal and petty, something that screamed neighborhood nightmare, a calculated strike born from spite and unchecked authority. And there, caught crystal clear on my security camera feed from the dead of night, was Victoria Hargrove, the self-appointed ruler of our little suburban kingdom, waving her arms like a deranged orchestra conductor, her silhouette sharp against the moonlit street, guiding a tow truck straight to my ride at 2 a.m., her sharp nails catching the glow from the street lamps as she wielded bolt cutters that sliced through my heavy-duty lock with ease, the metal grinding and snapping in a sound that echoed through the quiet cul-de-sac, leaving behind a crumpled note flapping in the breeze like a mocking flag of surrender, citing some obscure rule about vehicle alterations breaching community guidelines, impounded until I bowed to her demands, signed off by the management as if she owned the whole damn world, her handwriting looping in that overly flourished style that screamed entitlement. That paper, crinkling under my fingers as I unfolded it in the dim porch light, ignited a fire in me that I hadn't felt in years, a simmering rage mixed with the bitter taste of betrayal from what should have been a safe haven, because what Victoria didn't know, couldn't have possibly fathomed in her bubble of HOA dominance, was that she'd just tangled with the wrong guy, crossing lines that went far beyond local squabbles into federal territory, since those so-called modifications on my SUV weren't some hobbyist tweaks done in a garage on a weekend whim. They were essential gear for my job as a federal environmental enforcement officer, tracking down wildlife traffickers and black market dealers who treated rare animals like commodities, smuggling them in hidden crates across borders, endangering ecosystems for profit. And me, I wasn't one to let injustice slide, especially when it hit this close to home, threatening not just my wheels but the integrity of an ongoing operation that had taken months to build. Picture this, me, 35 years old, assigned to Oak Ridge Meadows, Oregon, a picture-perfect development of 200 identical houses, average price tag around $450,000, where the lawns are clipped to perfection with edges so straight they could have been drawn with a ruler, and the air always carries that artificial scent of fresh mulch and enforced order. The kind of place where rules aren't suggestions but commandments etched in stone, enforced with fines and glares from nosy committees, and my SUV, disguised as just another off-road enthusiast toy with mud splatters for authenticity, was actually a rolling operations hub with concealed tech that could pinpoint smugglers halfway across the state, hidden compartments holding recording devices and satellite links that buzzed quietly under the hood. She, Victoria Hargrove, 62, with her over-bleached hair that gleamed unnaturally under any light, and that gleaming white luxury crossover she polished religiously every weekend, rain or shine, had clawed her way to the top of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association board after a messy divorce that left her with a chip on her shoulder the size of a mountain, turning her bitterness into a crusade for control. Her sprawling corner housed the throne from which she issued decrees, her yard so impeccably groomed it felt fake underfoot, tended by a squad that arrived like clockwork every Wednesday morning, their mowers humming in unison like a well-drilled army. From day one, she'd shown up with a forced smile that never reached her eyes and a thick binder of regulations, the pages smelling of fresh ink and impending headaches, each clause a potential trap for the unwary homeowner. And it wasn't long before the warnings started rolling in. First about my SUV's rugged look offending the neighborhood's vibe, those beefy tires apparently a threat to everyone's precious property values, scuffing the pristine asphalt or something equally absurd, then nitpicking my irregular hours because duty calls don't stick to a 9 to 5, pulling me out at odd times for stakeouts in remote forests where poachers lurked, and I tried playing nice, attending meetings with fresh pastries from the upscale bakery downtown, the kind with flaky crusts and real fruit fillings, sitting in that stuffy hall that reeked of stale Java and faded hopes, facing her, and the board. A nodding retiree accountant named Walter, a perpetually dazed Pilates teacher called Linda, and a distracted salesman Carl who fiddled with his device like it held the secrets to the universe, all while I explained my travel needs without blowing my cover. But things turned ugly at the annual cookout, where her overly friendly advances, laced with that predatory charm and a touch too much perfume that clung like a bad memory, got brushed off as I stayed focused on my undercover work, scanning the crowd for any leads on local connections to the trafficking ring. And I could see the shift in her eyes, that wounded pride turning to venom amid the haze of barbecue smoke and sizzling meats. Her scrutiny locking onto my vehicle like a hawk spotting prey, noting the discreet upgrades she couldn't quite place but knew disrupted her ideal of suburban bliss. The antenna placements that blended in but hummed with purpose, the reinforced frame that spoke of more than weekend adventures. Deep down, I recalled my agency training on handling local meddlers, how federal mandates override petty covenants under the law's hierarchy, sessions in stuffy conference rooms where instructors drilled us on constitutional protections. But clearly, no one had schooled Queen Victoria on that. Her ego too bloated to grasp that some rules don't bend to her whims. And as the complaints escalated, doctored images showing imaginary parking violations with shadows manipulated to suggest encroachments that never happened, her campaign felt almost comical in its overreach, yet infuriating, building toward a confrontation that would expose the rot beneath the manicured surface, the unfairness of a system where one person's grudge could upend lives, families caught in the crossfire of her personal vendettas. The tension ramped up fast after that barbecue snub, Victoria calling an urgent session with the board as if the sky was falling, her voice shrill over the phone lines demanding immediate action, held in her pristine sitting room that assaulted your senses with overpowering lavender diffusers masking underlying mustiness, where she'd whipped up a slideshow dubbed Neighborhood Harmony Protocols. Because nothing says obsession like turning software into a tool for vendettas on a weeknight evening, complete with animated transitions that grated on the nerves. And there sat Walter bobbing his head in agreement like a puppet on strings, Linda looking lost in thought amid her yoga-induced haze, Carl barely glancing up from his screen as she paraded snapshots she'd snapped covertly, lurking behind curtains at odd hours, accusing my SUV of clashing with the aesthetic. Her edits, so blatant they warped reality like a funhouse mirror, lines drawn where none existed, measurements that laughed in the face of logic, claiming it loomed like a menace, dragging down home prices and stirring unease among families who just wanted peace after long days at work or school. The vote came down 3-1 for steep daily penalties until I conformed, Linda the lone holdout with her serene vibe intact, perhaps sensing the imbalance in the force or just the sheer pettiness. And as I consulted my agency's legal eagles, yeah, we have specialists for these civilian clashes, since they pop up more than you'd imagine, pouring over case files in dimly lit offices. The exemptions shone through, my registration screaming official use with seals tougher to forge than national currency, watermarked and serialized. So I pushed back formally, demanding a review, submitting paperwork in triplicate, even bringing my superior Captain Hernandez, a battle-hardened vet built like he could lift trucks, his uniform crisp and medals subtly pinned, to vouch for me in that same scented den now boosted with candle flames dancing like omens, laying out how the gear busted rings peddling protected creatures worth fortunes, from exotic birds to reptiles smuggled in luggage. But Victoria fired back with paranoia, questioning our badges like an amateur sleuth in a bad thriller, tossing around slurs that chilled the air, those types lingering like poison, as the room averted eyes and whispers spread, painting me as the outsider threat, the board caving to her sway with mutters of caution over confrontation, their fear of her wrath evident in every hesitant nod. Those fines piled up quick, hitting me with a bill that burned a hole in my focus, distracting from the real mission of safeguarding vulnerable species from greedy hands. But my instincts kicked in, digging into backgrounds as protocol for risks, using secure databases that hummed with encrypted data, and boom, the twist hit. Victoria held stakes in swift retrieval, towing via her brother-in-law Tommy Hargrove, pocketing slices from every haul and hold, turning enforcement into a profit scheme. Cloaked in duty, a web of kickbacks that explained her zeal for impounds, fracturing the community into camps. Hers drawing the timid and tricked with promises of stability, mine smaller but steadfast, spearheaded by George, an 85-year-old war hero who sniffed out oppression even in khakis, his experiences in distant battles sharpening his eye for injustice here at home. Slipping notes of solidarity under my door in elegant script from a bygone era, words of encouragement that bolstered my resolve amid the isolation. While she ramped up her online smears, cryptic posts warning of shady intruders endangering kids, crafting a tale where she was the guardian and I the villain, her fingers flying over the keyboard late at night. But I held back, letting her rack up offenses, knowing in my line of work, patience turns mistakes into nooses, each post a digital footprint leading to her downfall. Desperation made her bolder, hiring Jake Harlan, a sleazy PI who trailed me reeking of cheap aftershave and failure, his car idling at corners with binoculars glinting, unearthing my real role but twisting it into tales of luring dangers to our streets, fueling a petition branding me a hazard with signatures from the clueless, gathered at manipulated meetings with free coffee as bait, and my own probes via secure channels unveiled her shady past, license yanks in California for shady deals, involving hidden property flaws, siphoning funds from prior boards before bolting to Oregon like a fugitive in heels, her outfit Evergreen Home Services unlicensed and uninsured, bilking families blind with phantom charges that drained savings meant for college funds or family vacations. Then, while I was deep in a stakeout chasing leads through Idaho, hunkered down in brush with binoculars fogging from my breath, I returned to find my spot bare, lock chains severed gleaming mockingly under the dawn light, rage surging metallic in my throat as footage revealed her midnight raid, pearls shining as she commanded Tommy's rig, hauling away what wasn't just wheels but a lifeline to Project Eagle. My active probe into cross-border animal rackets, her meddling a felony with teeth, fine starting at 10 grand plus time behind bars. Yet I played it cool, sensing a larger grift preying on dissenters, a pattern of abuse that tore at the fabric of family lives. Sure enough, notices flew to others. Mike slammed for his long-time boat storage that had been a family heirloom passed down generations. The Lopez family threatened over their camper despite legacy rights older than their kids' school years, and the scheme clarified, hitting challengers with bogus fees to feed her coffers. No uplift, just theft in fine print, preying on the love parents had for providing stable homes. And then came Sarah Novak, the sharp-eyed auditor neighbor, approaching, stealthily with whispers of fishy ledgers after her own slap for non-standard, flowers clashing with some invented palette, her garden a small act of rebellion in a sea of conformity, her digs revealing vanished reserves, padded bills for snowtime landscaping and ghost security, funds siphoning to her pockets like a leaky faucet turned flood, each discovery a blow against the injustice that had simmered for too long. Captain Hernandez looped in when the theft crossed agency lines, FBI fraud hounds perking up at the embezzlement web, greenlighting my covert push as Victoria's sins mounted, tampering with my impounded ride, snapping pics of sensitive tech that could unravel ops worth millions, her face on tape twisting from triumph to terror as reality dawned, the lot's chain-link fence rattling in the wind like a warning, while Sarah's spreadsheets exposed forged votes, phantom meetings when members were states away, her authority a sham, every levy illegal, escalating from local bully to international launderer with offshore stashes in tropical havens, pulling in regulators as her targeting hit minorities 300% harder, vets twice as often, single moms with vile insinuations, her bigotry bare, stripping away the dignity of hard-working families, and as pressure built, her hires turned to break-ins at my place, triggering alerts that flipped Jake into a singing canary, confessing her plots to debunk my creds, adding conspiracy to her tally, the net tightening as media sniffed the scandal, IRS liens biting, lawyers fleeing, her isolation complete, desperation peaking in vandalism, false reports, doxing that terrorized families, anonymous calls stirring fears for kids and elders, her empire crumbling under its own weight as we geared for the takedown. The weight of her actions a heavy burden on the community's collective soul. The unraveling hit its zenith in a blaze of unhinged fury, Victoria spiraling into accusations of plots and poison, her grocery store tirade going viral as she raved about hidden trackers in mail and produce, reeking of booze and breakdown amid aisles of neatly stacked cans and fresh produce that mocked her chaos. Phones capturing her fall from grace, while her last-ditch frauds, forged loans on shared lands, fake emergency dues, tripped bank alarms straight to feds, her harassment calls to my HQ. Stacking obstruction counts, frantic messages filled with paranoia that echoed her crumbling mind. And as safety became paramount, patrols circled discreetly, marshals shadowed allies with vigilant eyes, restraining orders piled from tormented homes where parents hugged their children tighter at night. The media storm erupting with headlines of pilfered agency assets and suburban scams, turning our fight into a beacon for reform. Her psych ward check-in a feeble bid for sympathy that prosecutors shredded like confetti, my wired confrontation sealing it as she spewed admissions of bias and theft, damning herself on tape with slurs against the Lopez kin and Mrs. Thompson's patriotic displays, her venom against vets like Mike and elders like George fueling civil rights fire, the raw pain of discrimination laid bare in her own words, and with evidence towering like a monument to justice. The grand jury sealed indictments, 23 felonies from fraud to laundering to espionage risks. Her assets iced, mansion leaned, credentials shredded across states. The showdown unfolded cinematic in the packed Civic Hall, chairs groaning under 200 souls buzzing with pent-up fury, cameras rolling as I rolled up in my reclaimed SUV, badges bold under the spotlights, the air thick with anticipation, and Old Joe mingled with the scent of polished wood, Victoria striding in regal yet ragged, pearls clutching like lifelines around her neck, her counsel grim-faced and whispering urgently. And as I rose, badge flashing with a metallic glint, revealing my federal environmental enforcement officer truth amid gasps that rippled through the crowd like waves, piecing together the undercover veil that had protected fragile investigations, the crowd erupting in realization. George saluting sharply from his wheelchair, Mrs. Thompson tearful with hands clasped in gratitude, explaining the gear's role in safeguarding species from global thugs. Her face draining color as Sarah unleashed charts of $150,000 siphoned, boats and trips on stolen dimes that could have funded community playgrounds or school supplies, the room boiling to her leap and shrieks of setups and sexism. Chaos peaking as marshals surged with purposeful strides, charges booming like verdicts, fraud, rights breaches, theft, obstruction, racket, cuffs snapping shut to cheers that echoed off the walls, her walk of shame through victims a symphony of justice, my words ringing clear. In this land, power abusers meet their match. No exemptions for tyrants and pearls, the applause a release of long-held breaths. In the glow of aftermath, Victoria cooled in custody, no bail for a flight hazard with hidden fortunes stashed away, forfeits reclaiming nearly 200 grand for restitution that eased the financial scars on families. Swift elections crowning Elena Ramirez the educator with her warm smile, David Chin the caregiver full of empathy, George the warrior with his unyielding spirit, Sarah the numbers with whose precision cut through lies, their debut a feast from reclaimed loot under string lights. Healing the divides with laughter and shared stories around picnic tables, rules revamped for fairness, audits open to all, the Ethan Black neighborhood park blooming where control once choked, vibrant flowers and benches inviting families to gather, Oregon's homeowners protection bill born from our strife, federal probes citing us as blueprint for dismantling similar schemes. My testimony shaping laws against such predators in congressional halls echoing with debates, and personally, bonds. Deepened amid the chaos, Sarah and I finding love in shared battles, her hand in mine a anchor against the storms, me rooting in Oak Ridge for good, trading nomadic assignments for community stability that felt like coming home after years adrift. The Oak Ridge Fairness Fund aiding future defenders with scholarships for those pursuing justice, a docuseries suburban shadows sparking probes galore across the nation. Prison notes from her confessing decades of deceit aiding wider nets that snared. Accomplices, our haven thriving with rising values, zero biases reported, gardens feeding the needy with bountiful harvests, a model of unity proving communities conquer when standing firm against the tides of unfairness. But as the dust settles on this tale of unchecked power and hard-won retribution, I can't help but wonder, was the system's slow grind a necessary evil for thorough justice, or does it leave too many scarred in the wake? Where do we draw the line between community rules and personal freedoms, especially when families hang in the balance? And in the end, is revenge through law the purest form of closure? Or does it risk echoing the very tyranny it topples? Tell me your thoughts. Have you faced similar shadows? And how far would you go for what's right?